She is hearing voices from every direction, and I think I am going to bail. Crowd is pointing at the Jumbotron. This was supposed to be a landmark day for the sport. You know, if I had to fall to anyone, I am glad it was you. Looking at it, the risks might not be as high as they appear. But for me, in hindsight, her coach finally stepped out of the shadows, and the bombshell he dropped regarding the tears behind Alex Eala changes the entire narrative. For weeks, the public thought they had the story straight regarding Manila. The narrative was that the pressure swallowed her whole. Yeah, there were some rough patches. The stage was simply too bright. No, honestly, I am beyond happy. Totally get the emotions running high right now. The golden girl of Philippine tennis supposedly cracked when the stakes were highest. She is not the only one, oh Alexander Eala. That is the script everyone bought. It is a complete fabrication. The reality of what transpired on that clay, the physical torture Alex Eala endured for 2 agonizing hours while a nation watched, was classified. She swore her team to secrecy, begging them to let the world think she just got outplayed. So she took her seat at the podium. I know so many people were pulling for me. Devastated, she looked into the cameras and apologized to 100 million people for letting them down. But her coach reached his breaking point. What he unveiled in the next 5 minutes sucked the air right out of the room. Pens stopped moving. Shutters stopped clicking. Because this was not a post-mortem on a loss. It was the saga of a 20-year-old who could hardly stay upright, a kid doctors said had no business walking. She chose to shatter her own body rather than break her people's hearts. To grasp the gravity of that decision, you have to understand the stage. The Philippines had held its breath for decades for this specific moment, not just for an event, but for validation that a nation of 100 million could forge a champion worthy of the global spotlight. Enter Alex Eala, a kid from Quezon City who kissed her family goodbye at 13, flew to Spain alone, and grinded at the Rafa Nadal Academy while her peers were worrying about school dances. She bartered her childhood for a pipe dream everyone called a fantasy. No Filipino had ever cracked the top 50. No Filipino had ever toppled a top 5 giant. No Filipino had ever claimed a Grand Slam match victory. Alex checked all 3 boxes. Miami, 2025. She marched in as a wild card, sitting at 141st in the rankings. She walked out having dismantled 3 Grand Slam titans back-to-back, including the world number 2 Iga Swiatek. The tennis community did not just take note, they were obsessed. Alexandra Eala was past the prospect phase. She was a full-blown phenomenon. She snagged the SEA Games gold, the first Filipina to pull that off in 26 years. She smashed her way into the top 50. Magazine spreads blue-chip sponsorships. Her media sessions racked up more clicks than Alcaraz and Sabalenka put together. So when the WTA unveiled the Philippine Women's Open, the inaugural professional women's tour stop in the country, there was only one narrative that mattered. Alex Eala hoisting the hardware on native soil. Box office sold out in a heartbeat. The Rizal Memorial Tennis Center morphed into a sanctuary of sport. Drums thundering banners spanning entire sections. Families who did not know an ace from a fault bought seats just to touch history. This ceased to be a tournament. It was a coronation. The prodigal daughter was home, and the whole country was ready to watch her ascend the throne. The burden on her shoulders was crushing, but pressure was not the assassin. 3 days out from the quarterfinals, a practice session went sideways. A standard drill, a quick pivot, and then cut to black. The only evidence is a close-up of Eala's face, contorted in instant agony. Alex Eala had shredded the ligaments in her ankle. Not a tweak, not a sprain. A grade 2 ligament tear. The type of damage that pulls the plug on seasons, the kind that puts pros on crutches for weeks. Doctors ran the evaluation immediately. The diagnosis was a nightmare. The joint was already blowing up. Within hours, it would balloon to double its size. The pain was blinding, described as shards of glass grinding on bone with every single step. The medical verdict was unanimous. Withdraw, immediately. Do not suit up. Her team signed off on it. Her family pleaded with her. Everyone who cared about her screamed the same warning. Pull the plug. Save your career. There will be next time. Alex shook her head. Her people were in the stands. They had booked flights from the furthest provinces. Little girls were holding up handmade posters. Families had scrapped together savings for months just to catch a glimpse of her. She refused to bail on them if she had to drag herself onto that court she was playing. For the next 72 hours, Alex Eala lived on a therapy table. 6 hours of daily torture just to jam her foot into a sneaker ice compression elevation pain management that bordered on reckless, and then the injections. Needles drilled straight into the compromised tissue just so she could stand without buckling. Nobody outside the inner sanctum had a clue. Not the organizers, not the press, not the thousands counting down the minutes until the quarterfinal. Alex Eala was marching into combat with a broken chassis, determined to fight solo. And waiting across the net, Camila Osorio. The Colombian was not in. Manila for a holiday. A former top 35 contender, she turns every point into a street fight, grinding rallies, suffocating defense, and a mental game that is bulletproof. Osorio had scalped top 20 talent. She had been tested in the fires of Grand Slams. She knew exactly how to smell blood in the water, and she was staring down a wounded animal. If Osorio caught even a whiff of hesitation, she would strike without remorse. That is the nature of the beast at this level. You find the wound and you hammer it until the wall comes down. Alex knew it. Her corner knew it. Everyone in that locker room knew the score. But the die was cast. The noise that washed over Alexandra Eala when she emerged from the tunnel was unlike anything seen in the history of Philippine tennis. Thousands of lungs screaming her name drums, shaking the concrete foundation. A sea of red, white, and blue flooding the bleachers, every seat taken, every gaze locked on the national hero. They had zero idea what she was concealing. From the very first ball, the illusion shattered. That explosive launch step gone. The whip-crack forehand that dismantled Swiatek in Miami, shaky, uncertain. She was moving, but the glide was gone. The razor's edge was dull. And Osorio. She saw it instantly. The Colombian player launched her attack. She mixed it up, feathering a drop shot to the forehand, then drilling a deep one to the backhand. She ran Alex ragged, yanking her from sideline to sideline. It forced Alex to plant that compromised foot repeatedly. Every turn screamed with pain. Running felt like torture. Each time she drove off that ankle, it felt like she was stepping on burning coals, but she refused to quit. The opening set vanished. 6-2 Osorio. But if you looked at her face during the break, you saw the truth. It wasn't about being annoyed or upset with her performance. It was the look of someone enduring agony that would have dropped an average person instantly. Up in the box, her crew watched powerless. They understood the hell she was going through and knew she had no business being on that court. Yet they also knew stopping her was impossible. Then came the second set, which morphed into a different beast altogether, a battle of sheer grit. Trailing a set, facing a top-tier rival, and moving on basically one good leg, Alex did exactly what champions do. She clawed her way back. Breaking Osorio's serve sent the crowd into a frenzy, the roar absolutely ear-splitting. 3 games apiece. Suddenly, the impossible seemed doable. For a fleeting, painful heartbeat, it looked like heart alone might carry her through. Then disaster struck, tied at 4 games. Osorio chipped another short one over the net. Alex charged the net, just like she had done countless times before she planted her foot to cut and froze. Her expression twisted. You could see the agony from the nosebleed seats. Something in that ankle had finally snapped. She dropped the point, then the game, then the one after that. She managed to fend off a few match points because that is just who she is. But the tank was empty. 6-4, 6-4. Game over. At the handshake, Osorio held on for a beat too long. She had noticed the hitch in Alex's step. She knew Alex wasn't right. Later, she would say Alex was insane to even try playing, calling her a fierce competitor destined for future titles. None of that mattered right then, though. The pride of Philippine tennis exited with her head down while the audience sat there, shocked and silent. No anger, just confusion and heartbreak. This wasn't the script, and the real blow was yet to land. 30 minutes later, Alexandra walked into the media center sporting her national colors. Makeup couldn't mask the puffiness around her eyes. Her face was etched with redness and pure exhaustion. She took her seat, fixed the mic, inhaled deeply, and fell apart. She spoke in jagged pieces. broken sentences punctuated by sobbing. She claimed she had failed everyone, fans, family, the whole country. She wanted to give them a win. She insisted she had given it her all. Win or lose it, hits me hard, she stammered. But today, words weren't enough. She didn't say a word about the ankle, the tear, the shots, the insomnia, or the medical team that pleaded with her to sit this one out. She shouldered the entire burden herself. That is when the critics swooped in. Social media turned into a slaughterhouse within minutes. Keyboard warriors who had never swung a racket labeled her mentally fragile. The same fans who cheered her an hour ago were now ripping her to shreds. The narrative was set. Alex couldn't handle the pressure. She saw every post. She read every comment. And she stayed silent. That was the narrative she chose to accept. But one person in that room had seen enough. Her coach stood in the back, watching his athlete tear herself down on the world stage. He had made a promise. He swore he would keep her secret and let her own the narrative, even if it destroyed her reputation. But seeing a 20-year-old apologize to a nation for a match she should have skipped just snapped something in him. As Alex was escorted out, he made his move. He stepped up, seized the mic, and his voice sliced through the quiet. "Sit down, no one leaves. You want a story? I'll give you the real story." Reporters packing their gear froze. Laptops snapped back open. Cameras swiveled. The room went dead still. I just watched that young woman apologize to her country. I watched her admit failure. I watched her take the heat. He paused, jaw clenching. What she hid, what she made us vow to keep quiet, is that she shouldn't even be walking right now, never mind playing pro tennis. He spilled it all. The injury in practice 3 days prior. The grade 2 ligament tear. The MRI revealing catastrophic damage. An ankle blown up to double its size, requiring 6 hours of daily prep just to jam it into a sneaker. He described the doctors pleading with her to pull out, her family begging her to stop, the team trying to convince her no trophy was worth permanent disability. Then he held up his phone. It showed a photo of Alex's ankle from hours before the match, bruised black and blue, massively swollen and taped so heavily it looked like a cast. Doctors who saw the picture later called it beyond inadvisable. It was reckless. The chance of turning a partial tear into a full rupture, ending her career, was massive. You want to know her response when we told her to quit? His voice broke. She said her people were out there. They bought tickets. They were waiting. She said she wouldn't bail on them. She said she'd crawl onto that court if she had to. She took numbing shots just to walk out of the tunnel. Then she played 2 hours of elite tennis against a world-class rival on one leg. His hand struck the podium with a thunderous crack. She didn't lose because she lacked strength. She fell because her body hit its absolute physical limit. Yet her spirit remained ironclad. Not for a single second did she waver. The press room fell deadly silent. Journalists poised to type up Eala Choke's headlines simply froze. That young woman apologizing to the Philippines, that wasn't frailty. That was the most selfless display of character witnessed in a lifetime of coaching. She chose the label of failure over making excuses, shielding the tournament and the sponsors rather than exposing her personal agony. He gestured toward the exit Alex had just used. You don't call that a failure. That is the single grittiest athlete I have ever trained. Go back and watch the tape. View it with fresh eyes. That wasn't a player in a slump. That was a warrior executing the impossible on a shattered ankle. Every return was a marvel. Every point secured was a victory over biology itself. Those weren't unforced errors. The fact that she could even stand on that clay, fire off those shots, and compete at that intensity, that is nothing short of miraculous. She battled a world-class rival on one functioning leg, holding the line at 6'4", against a former top 35 pro while nursing a grade 2 ligament tear. That is not a defeat. That is the stuff of legend. Camila Osorio recognized it immediately. At the net, she told Alex she was insane for even taking the court. Later, she dubbed her one of the fiercest competitors she had ever encountered. She predicted Alex Eala would reign as a champion for years to come. The rival saw the fire. The coach unveiled the reality. Now, the public understands. The instant the truth surfaced, the momentum shifted. The very platforms that had shredded her reputation began flooding the airwaves with apologies. We had no idea. We are sorry, Alex. You are a hero. Forgive us. The critics went mute. The narrative flipped in a heartbeat. Banners screaming of a collapse morphed into tributes to her sacrifice. Pundits who doubted her mental game now lauded her guts. Yet the aftermath mattered most. The fans she fought to protect finally grasped the gravity. The little girls clutching posters. The families who scraped together savings for tickets. The nation that watched her rise didn't see a loser. They saw a daughter whose love was so fierce she would rather wreck her own body than break their collective heart. This defines Alexandra Eala. Not the tears in the press room or the match stats, but the athlete who prioritized her people over her pain. The warrior willing to fracture herself to keep their dreams intact. At 20 years old, she has achieved what no Filipino tennis player has ever done before. She toppled the world #2, secured a Grand Slam match victory, claimed gold for her flag, and packed stadiums across 3 continents. She made legends like Martina Navratilova demand larger arenas just to house her fan base. The ankle will mend, the rankings will rise, and the Grand Slam titles will arrive. But this moment in Manila remains etched in history. Not as a loss, but as the day the world discovered the fire burning inside Alexandra Eala. Beyond talent and technique lies a heart that is unbreakable, selfless, and heroic, the anatomy of a true champion. That is the truth behind the tears. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button right now. We don't just cover tennis here. We chronicle the stories that count. The narratives the mainstream media overlooks, the ones that demand to be heard. Share this video with every tennis fan in your circle. Share it with every Filipino who needs to hear this. Send it to anyone seeking a definition of true courage. We'll catch you in the next broadcast.